Happy Halloween, everybody! I hope you are celebrating it, because I kind of am. I may not be wearing a costume this year because I couldn't get one, but at least I can do one thing for Halloween that we all can enjoy doing. Watch movies, right? I mean, don't you people do that on Halloween? Are you going to call me crazy for thinking that's an actual tradition? Because I think it is a tradition. And you know what I think also? Every year, for the beginning of time, I like to try to think about how many scary movies I can watch. And I've done that even when I did go trick-or-treating. I look at scary movies and get scared by them. So let's find some for this time. But instead of doing an actual top 10 list of my favorite scary movies like I've done in the past, let's try something different. Because I keep doing that. I want to try something different. I don't want my channel to die because people are so upset that I keep clicheing myself. So how about we do a list differently? And not only that, let's make it 5 movies instead of 10. And instead of this being a top 5 of my favorite horror movies, let's just choose 5 random horror movies that I watched this year for the first time. Because I definitely like to check out some new horror films each year. So what I'm going to do is, today I'm going to be talking about 5 scary movies that I've watched for the first time this year, this October especially. And I'm just going to share my long opinion on it. So yeah, we're going to have 5 scary movies that I watched for the very first time this October for Halloween, instead of just looking at other scary movies. And remember, these are just 5, they're not in any particular order, I'm not ranking them by anything. I'm just choosing 5 that I watched for the first time this year, mainly just the more popular ones that I watched for the first time. And these are all horror films that I first checked out this year to get into Halloween. No, again, no ranking at all. We're not actually ranking them. We're just talking about them randomly. So yeah, remember the cue. 5 scary movies I watched for the first time this Halloween. Let's look. A Quiet Place Part 2. So, for those who don't already know, the original A Quiet Place movie from 2018 is actually my all-time favorite horror film ever. Weird, but true. I actually found it to be very scary compared to everything else. It just was that scary feeling. And so, of course, I would want to see the sequel. And so I did. It came out earlier this year in around May or soon, but of course I got to check it out for Halloween, so I did. And I gotta admit, I think A Quiet Place Part 2 holds up fine. It definitely is not at all better than the original, however. The original was great because, again, it featured a type of concept that really do make horror films the more chilling. Of people being quiet, and if they talk, they get killed. That's just something that would feel the most intimidating to sit through, in my opinion. And it was. This movie is good. I mean, it definitely does do a fine job continuing. The problem, however, though, is that it wasn't scarier. It probably even wasn't even as scary as the original was. This one seems to take more of a science fiction approach than being scared. And I know you could complain, well, the original was science fiction too. Kind of, not really. The original had still very scary moments and was still a frightening fest. This one is scary in some ways, but overall it just mostly is more of an action type of horror film than an actual horror film. There's more talking in it. It's kind of scarred me less. I mean, I guess I can be a little nitpicky, but it was fun. It was still a good movie. I still enjoyed this one, even though it's not better than the original, and even though the original is still my all-time favorite horror film, and even though this one can never beat it, it was still fine. It still did a fine job. Number 2, Hellraiser. Wow, I'm actually going far. Hellraiser is a name of a movie that is really something you wouldn't expect someone my age to watch. Hellraiser was a very crazy film, I'm telling you. Hellraiser is already in the name a movie that's not my type. It's called Hellraiser. Come on, anything with that name in it is automatically not for me. Well, I watched it anyway, and yeah, it was creepy. The movie is more of a gross out film than I could expect. It mostly features more gore in it than creeps. It was kind of on a scary limit, but at the same time, I don't know if I was more scared of it or scarred of it. Because a good chunk of this movie just features people bleeding and all that mess. It was weird. There's even moments in the movie that feature bleeding that doesn't even have anything to do with the overall story. It's like just random bleeding moments that aren't actually part of what the movie is talking about. So basically, it's just scarring us with all this gore that probably isn't even important. I focused on the story, sort of. I sort of focused on what the story was about. But overall, I kind of was a little bit too busy getting scarred from how creepy, gory this was. It's one of the gory type of scary movies that may have not have done as much. And I'll admit, the plot was kind of weird to me. It kind of felt weird. It was about some girl who has to save her long lost brother who is being dying as she has to give him more blood, and so she just goes around killing people to get more blood for her. What? I don't know. That just sounded weird to me. A lot of this movie sounded weird, and a lot of it was odd, but I mean, I still watched it, and at least I watched it. It might have not been that great, but it was gory, definitely. It was definitely a gory film, and I definitely would probably feel very disgusted if I have to sit through it again. So, if any of you ever want to watch this movie with me, I'm probably going to say no. Or maybe we can watch some of the other ones, because I still am well. This has actually become a franchise, believe it or not. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, let's look at this kind of film. I Know What You Did Last Summer is, some sort of a unique type of idea. It's one of those horror films that wasn't well received as much, but is actually a pretty unique idea that I actually was interested in. The film tells the plot of four teens who accidentally run over someone, hide the body, choose not to tell anybody, but 1 year later is stalked by a fisher hook type of person who is killing them after the bad deed they did. That's honestly kind of creative. I just wish this movie went it out better. I don't know, this movie kind of didn't take that idea and made it as fun as I thought it would. It did fine, I guess. I mean, it still did scare some way. But overall, it just kind of felt more like a teen film than a horror film. Because the whole idea of them running over a body sounds more or less like, something you would see in a horror comedy type. I don't know, that might just be me, but the film focuses more on teen material than actual horror material. And when the horror material does come, while I can say it was good, it was just okay. It wasn't really that creepy enough. And the plot twist wasn't really much of a plot twist, since the person who is behind the killer isn't really somebody we knew. It's just some random person that isn't even part of the plot in any way. Regardless of any of this, I Know You Did Last Summer kind of wasn't as creative I thought, but I mean, I still found it to be an interesting idea. It could have good potential, it just, needed to actually have good potential in it. So I give this movie a pass, just not a hard, big pass. I just feel like that maybe with something this creative of an idea could have used it better, rather than take a bunch of teens and put them in a bunch of a teen type of film. The horror. I like it, it's fine, but who knows? At least there's not a sequel. There's not a sequel, right? Oh god. The Conjuring. Now here is a more popular one out of the bunch. A lot of you know what The Conjuring is. The Conjuring is one of the more recent ones out of all these movies. The Conjuring is probably the most popular franchise out of all the movies here, right? We have to figure it out later. Anyway, let's talk about what The Conjuring's about. It's a story about a bunch of people who move into a new house, but are starting to find something strange going on, which could come from a creepy doll. Something like that, And I'm actually going to be honest, despite this movie receiving nice acclaim by most of y'all and being considered one of the best horror films ever, it was overrated. Okay, hear that out, alright? Look, I did not think it was bad. I did not hate it at all. But nor did I really enjoy it. I just kind of thought that maybe it could have been a little bit creepier. I don't know, it just wasn't as creepy as it been advertised as. Looking at the poster and looking at the trailers, I really thought I was going to get scared by this. That I really was thinking this movie was really going to have a more edgier edge to it, but it didn't. Its edge was just kind of lacking a bit, but only a bit. It was still fine. It was a decent horror film, just not a great one. I was expecting a little bit more intensity to it, but to be fair, I feel like it's something I gotta watch more into the franchise. So maybe next Halloween I'll get more into the franchise and maybe I'll appreciate this more, but for now, I've only watched this one, and for now, I personally feel like The Conjuring overall just isn't as scary as I could have considered it as. It was scary enough. It was scary enough for me to consider it an okay film. It just wasn't scary enough for me to consider it a great horror movie. So,
Unfortunately, The Conjuring just isn't there yet, but maybe if I get more into the franchise, maybe I'll appreciate this one more. I don't know if that's because I'll appreciate the franchise or because those movies will be so bad that I'll enjoy this one now. Who knows? But now, let's talk about the recent one, the one that everyone's trying to get through this Halloween. Well, of course, is Halloween Kills, the movie from the franchise that every Halloween fan watches. It's literally Halloween. That's literally what the franchise is. And so we have our 12th installment in the Halloween franchise. Jeez, what is with these movies? Halloween Kills, the movie that features the Michael Myers masked dude who returns for more evil. This franchise has released so many movies, and not a lot of them are good. In fact, the only ones I personally were considered to be good were the original and maybe the 2018 version. Those were the only ones I enjoyed the most. The rest were either decent enough or just not at all good. But here, let's look at the latest one, Halloween Kills. The movie, like I said, everyone went to see. Which, I guess what I'll admit, was kind of disappointing. I mean, it wasn't bad. I guess I could give it some sort of idea. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't, that great either. It really lacked some moments. The film lacked, let's say, Jamie Lee Curtis. Her character. She made a great comeback in the 2018 film, but she doesn't really have much of that anymore in this one, and she kind of just appears like about 5 minutes throughout the rest of the film. And the rest of it of Michael killing, it was gory enough, just wasn't creepy enough. It just wasn't enough to make it a big epic Halloween film. Thankfully, it's only the 12th. Yeah, I said only. There's actually more coming. It's weird, but yeah, so Halloween Kills was fine to see. I enjoyed going to the movie theater to see it. It was nice seeing a scary movie in the theater. It's just maybe it could have been better. They could have made it better. It could have been a lot better to make the experience better, but hey, I enjoyed what I got.
So happy Halloween, everybody. We just looked at 5 movies, and it wasn't as long as you thought it was. But I'm thanking you, okay? That's your Halloween gift. I'm not giving you a long video that's a waste of time. So be grateful of that, will you? Because if I was going to make a longer list, it probably would be more filler. It probably would be a waste of time. So be happy with what you got, okay? Be happy with what you got. And maybe sometime soon, next Halloween, I'll look at something even cooler you might enjoy. Something that might even be better than anything I've ever done in this entire channel. But now that Halloween's over, let's get back to the newer stuff. Let's look at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then we're getting to 2022. Jesus, what's happening with 2025? I'm already 16 years old. Like, jeez, I started this channel when I was 10, and now I'm 16. What? Who's doing this? Who's fast-forwarding time? Someone's fast-forwarding time, I bet. I gotta stop them.